Today we're going to be talking to my friends from Odesma, and I'll let them introduce themselves in a moment. We're going to be talking about the impact of change, and as you can tell from the title, winning hearts and minds, and how important that is. The challenges in procurement can be vast, and often it's difficult to know where to start. You know, is my procurement organization fit for purpose to tackle what the business is asking of me? How do we compare to our peers? And is our technology stack fit for purpose? Do I need a transformation agenda? And actually, what the hell does that even mean, right? But one of the biggest aspects that often gets overlooked, and it's not given the attention it necessarily deserves, is the impact that change will have on the organization. And more importantly, how should that be communicated? So let's talk to Nick and Ed from Odesma. Nick and Ed, why don't you give the audience a little bit of a flavor as to what you do? What is Odesma, and how you help customers, please?
Yeah, thanks, Mo, and thanks for inviting us onto these sessions. Been looking forward to them for a while. So Odesma, we're in our 7th year now of formulation, formed by myself, Ed, who's going to be on this session as well, and another partner by the name of Steve Trainer. And we formed the company to try and do things differently in terms of advising clients around procurement and supply chain, and also delivering programs for them. So we work across the whole all the areas of procurement and supply chain, okay. Whether that's a transformation program, which is what we're talking about today, cost reduction. We work in the areas of IT, and we have a different business model than most, in the fact that we only deploy subject matter experts to do our work in delivery. We've been working with probably over 50 customers over the past 7 years, either helping them with transformation, improving their capability, sorting out their processes or technology, and saving money for them.
Okay, thank you.
So in terms of what we're talking about in terms of transformation, we don't really see it as procurement transformation. We see it as business transformation.
Right.
And it's really all about winning the hearts and minds of the organization to buy into what you're doing. So the first area we really wanted to highlight was this whole area of managing stakeholders. It sounds an easy thing to do, but if you're working, you know, in a large organization, stakeholders can have different values, different cultures, different objectives. So this whole area of bringing the stakeholders on board to the transformation programs is really important.
Right. Yeah, and so how do you do that in terms of what's the most effective way of doing that, and how do you guys approach it?
Yeah, so it's a 3-step, as you'd imagine, consultancy organisation. We have step processing. So we have you look at it in terms of 3 key steps, really. One is to understand and identify who the key stakeholders are going to be on a program. So really getting an understanding of who they are, and then mapping those stakeholders where they really sit on a structure, which is, do they make decisions? Are they influencers? Do they just need to be informed, or are they really opposed to a program? So it's really trying to map out and understand who the key stakeholders are and map them out. And then you really want to do some analysis as to where you want to move those stakeholders on that map. So if you've got a really key decision maker, and at the moment he or she is pretty low down on their interest in this program, you need to do things to move those stakeholders to where you want them to be on that map. So it's about applying science to, you know, managing people's understanding and people's buy-in to the program, really.
And sometimes that's psychology too, right? In the sense that if you've got somebody who's not really showing much enthusiasm and you need them on board. It's trying to find the right things to help them understand how important it is, right?
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what we have done, you know, for really key stakeholders, you develop a sort of an action plan, like you would with a supplier, really.
Yeah.
An action plan as to how you're going to get that stakeholder on board. You know, whether that's communicating more, having separate workshops. You know, lots of techniques as to how you can really get stakeholders who are important on board with what you want to do. And it's a sort of science around relationship management and the importance within the organization, and you know, and using that technique to track across the program as well. So it's not something you would do just once. You would do it probably on a monthly basis, right, you know, as part of a program review, really understanding if you've moved your stakeholders to where you want them to be.
And how do you drive that?
Well, it's driven by a number of action plans for key stakeholders. It's communicating, it's having the right people within your own organization facing off to the relevant stakeholders. So it's no good of having, for example, somebody who really doesn't understand IT as an IT category manager and working with the CIO. You've got to be able to get a seat at the table and to you know, and get as part of their management team as well.
I think Mo, if I might jump in, I think when we think about stakeholder analysis, you know, clearly it's always situational. It's like, what is the change I'm trying to make?
I was going to ask that question: is why the change in the first place?
Yeah, and who do I need to influence? And then there's a third step, which a lot of people perhaps feel is a bit Machiavellian, if you like, but it's thinking about the people that you're dealing with that you need to have support from. That could be individuals or it could be groups of stakeholders, and thinking about what's motivating them.
Right.
And therefore thinking about, well, how do I tune into what they want? Because if I've got some blockers to a program, I need to identify their blockers. Now, I might be a bit cagey about how I capture that in writing, but I want to capture some thoughts around the people who might be in some shape or form not keen on a change program, or could even at one extreme actively block it because it doesn't suit their agenda. And I need to think about who they are, what motivates them, and then think about how I'm going to deal with that. Now that's going to be situational. It's going to change in every case. And then at the same time, you need to think about the people that are really supportive of the program that you wanted to bring to bear, and think about how you might use their supportive voice to bring along those people who might block, but also the people who are passive, because in lots of organizations, lots of people are not interested, but you might want them to be interested. So the way to approach it is really by thinking about who those groups are, sort of segmenting them mentally or on paper, you know, and then thinking about their motivations and how you tie into that motivation to get them to help you with your program. It's a big topic on its own, but it's critical.
And how does that map across cultural divides, right? I think that especially in large organizations where, you know, I was working with a CPG customer not too long ago, you know, and they've got a base of operations in the UK, but a lot of the decisions are made out in North America, but they've also got a couple of key people sitting in Germany or APJ. And that's a very diverse set of people, and we're human beings, right? So how do we tackle that?
So shall I'll pick up, Nick. I think that I've been through this. So I used to run a global business many moons ago, and I had a large French team and managing director in Paris that worked for me. I had the good fortune to have a mentor who worked with me, helping me as I developed and as I grew. And he wrote me a paper on the differences between the French culture and the British culture.
Can you send that to me?
Yes, and helped by the fact that his wife was French, so he could sort of, you know, be a sort of little bit of a maybe honest or dishonest broker, depending on your perspective. And he said, he wrote me this paper and he talked about the way in which the French and the British, the Anglo-Saxon culture was different. and therefore the things that I should think about. There's loads of resources out there for you to think about the way that Germany works, Finland works, the Scandinavians, the way that it works in Japan, or places that we've all been, and thinking about, well, what makes those people tick, and how should I play it, recognizing that I'm also, I'm not of the same nationality as those people, so therefore I have to tune somewhere in the middle. But I think you have to research it and read about it and learn about it. Yeah, Nick.
Yeah, I think to add to that, Ed, I mean, we've worked with a number of customers over the past few years on global transformation programs, setting up a new operating models as well. And we really worked with one particular company in Germany to really invested in this right at the start of a program. And we had mobilization sessions in Germany, in the US, Canada, Australia, Singapore, and at the time it was seen as maybe an expensive investment at the start of a program. But by running those mobilization events at the start and really getting the stakeholders involved and on board, whether they were sitting in Toronto or in Singapore, really helped the program to go smoothly at the latter end of it. And when things started to get a little bit rocky, we could refer back to what we did in those mobilization sessions. So I think that's a really good investment at the start. And then it's then about communicating to those stakeholders on a very regular basis. It's no good at doing it and then putting it in the cupboard. You've got to do that stakeholder work, do the mobilization, but then keep working on that on a very regular basis, once a month at least, to get people on board.
I think especially in the cloud world now, right? And I know I'm going to talk about technology only because, that's pretty much what I've done in my time. With cloud, it's all supposed to be quick, simple, easy, and so on. But what I found is that in a lot of organizations, culturally, quick, easy, simple doesn't seem to resonate. And it doesn't resonate because, in North America, I think, and even in some ways, the UK, I've seen that being embraced more, right? But the concept of doing things simply or re-engineering your existing process that may have been super complex for whatever reason, you try and strip that back and say, did you actually need to do it? You're talking about transformation. Now, transformation can mean anything, right? It can mean anything from, let's re-engineer your processes. Let's look at everything that you're doing, reevaluate, create a new foundation, build that up again. But doing that whilst, especially in the time of cloud, I think that makes it a little bit more challenging. And I don't know if you've seen anything there, because I know that the audience, anybody who's going through transformation will be talking about that in terms of, oh, right, well, organization X or country X isn't really being that receptive. And France have had this issue massively, right? What have you seen in that respect? For me, I've seen it as a challenge, but maybe you've been able to overcome it, or you've got some tips for people who are watching.
Yeah, I picked that up maybe to start, Ed. I think the one really important thing is about having the right people, the expertise in those relationship roles. I can remember a time when I was working for a large bank. I won't name the name of the bank, but we were going through a big transformation, big finance and procurement transformation program, and I decided to put my best 6 people. I had a team of about 90 people at the time. Decided to put my best 6 people into relationship roles, business relationship roles, and got an absolute, I won't swear on camera, I got an absolute, what can I say? Yeah, panning for doing that by a certain finance director. But it's so important to have your best people sitting at the table with those stakeholders, and I think, like you say, it's even more challenging doing that remotely. And I think you've really got to choose the right expertise, who's got the right category depth or the right technology depth to face off to key stakeholders, whether and having this, similar cultural values as well. I don't know, Ed, if you sort of come across
Yeah.
that.
I think just building on one of Nick's point and then a separate point, I think it's about having, if you're doing something global, you've got to have in-country leaders for your operation. So whether it's a technology change program, if it's implementing, an instance of SAP globally or whatever, it can't be done from the center entirely. It has to have local sort of people who understand the culture because they're from that culture that can extrapolate your message. So you'll have to maybe bring them to wherever the program is run from, educate them about what you're trying to do, so that they're on message and through to why you're doing it strategically as a business. And then, allow them to go back to their territory and to put it into language that suits. So for example, I've encountered, I think we did this with a Greco when we were working with them a few years ago, is getting group comms involved.
Mm-hmm.
Lots of big organizations have comms groups in country because they recognize, that operating in Malaysia is different to operating in Germany, which is different to, I don't know, Canada. So the thing is to then involve local comms to try and put the messaging and the overview of what you're trying to do into sort of appropriate language for the people in territory, I think. And then the other one just goes back to what I said about the textbook, really. Both Nick and I have been on business to Japan separately, I think, in the past, is that in Japan, people don't say no. Right? So whatever you do, they'll say broadly yes, because for cultural reasons. And I think that there's a number of other countries that are similar to that, where people won't give you direct feedback. So you need to understand that. You either get your group comms, global comms people to get involved and help you, or you have to learn about it and recognize the way they work. Now, if you've got a bit more experience under your belt, you sort of recognize those differences. You'll take that with you and think, well, I'm in, I don't know, Romania today. What makes, Romania tick? And you'll have a bit of a think about it, I think. So I think you have to educate yourself to make it work. You can't just take a sort of blunderbuss approach, which says, we're doing this, it's going to be like this, and just roll from there, because it won't work. So it's really about you learning as well about what works, and then using the devices under your control. So group comms, local comms are a great device for for helping with that. I could tell you loads of Shaggy Dog stories about newsletters with change, a program newsletter called Change, and people and we had a change hotline, so you get people ringing you up saying, have you got any change, because I've got £1 I want to, or $5 note I want to change. Just you need to be savvy, I think, on a lot of this stuff.
So where do we take this next then, right? I think that it's an important topic. People need to understand it before they embark on change. We've got a couple of future videos coming up between us where, you've got an approach for, if you're looking at procurement transformation, whilst it is inherently business transformation in the end, right? I think through what you do with assessing a procurement organization, how it's working, the challenges that you have, where you can unpick the areas that you can drive actual change. Is that people, is that process, is that technology? Do you want to talk about that a little bit? Because I think what you've just outlined is what the winning hearts and minds is super important, but equally understanding where you need to make that change in the first place is just as important, right? So the why.
Yeah.
Shall I go, Nick?
Yeah,
Yeah. So I think all change in businesses stems, or should stem, from the direction of the business. Yeah. So I think this is something that gets missed functionally a lot. It's certainly missed in procurement often, or sometimes, where you've got a strategy in procurement to do a certain, to go in a certain direction, isn't aligned with what the group or the executive of the business, the board of the business wants to happen. So I think that, the first step with any change program is linking back what you might want to do in procurement, or the strategy for procurement, back to the business's group strategy. So that's the first step. the second piece then is around, when you talk about, well, how sophisticated is the procurement operation, baselining, whether it's doing well, and where it's doing well and where it's not doing so well, and so forth.
Yeah.
That to my mind all links back to the strategy of the business ultimately. So it's all about thinking about, and this is the same in technology platform strategy and so forth, is thinking we want to do this because it will enhance shareholder value, it will enhance our customer experience or whatever. But at the end of the day, it's about shareholder value, and therefore any change activity in any form and any thinking about we're weak here, do we need to put resources and cash to fixing something or making it better, has to link back to that strategy. And really that becomes the voice through the business. And that's where, I talked about group comms earlier, that's where that fits in, because you're going to say to a procurement function, think about what you're not very good at. The first question is, well, we're brilliant at everything. Why the hell are you asking that question? But if you're thinking of it from the point of view of the business wants to go in this direction, how can we be even better to support that? That's a different set of observations, isn't it? I hope that answers the question.
Yeah, no, that's great. And I think that kind of links to the new CPO agenda, right? And getting a seat at the table, making sure that you are aligned to the business and that you're driving that value. Whether it's seen now as the chief value officer, and I know there's been a lot of conversation around that.
Yeah.
So yeah, no, that connects well to that. So talking about change within procurement, then you've got a very neat way at Odesma in terms of helping a procurement organisation understand where they should action change. So whilst we've talked about stakeholder engagement today and winning hearts and minds, it's also equally important to understand where those changes need to be made. So just to finish off today, why don't we just briefly introduce your Assessor and Aurora apps?
Yeah, so when we think about the journey in procurement and the direction of travel, we need to think about really where we are today.
Right.
So as part of our toolkit is really to say, from a procurement perspective, operationally, and from a performance perspective, where are you against your competition? Where are you against best practice? So that's standard as part of a consultant's toolkit, if you like, thinking about what are the levers of change, strategy, people, organizations, technology, process, and so forth. So what we've done is we've taken a view of all of the levers of change, and then we've put a technology wrapper around that so that the customer team can basically score themselves online in terms of how sophisticated their operation is. Now, we don't give them a scale of 1 to 5 or 1 to 10. Mm-hmm. What we do is we write down details for each of about 70 question areas, what weak looks like, right through to what best in class looks like. And then we ask them to, using a bit of a truth serum, we ask them to tick the box that says where they think they are in terms of that journey to world-class procurement. And then that technology platform does that for the whole of the operation, processes, etc., as I mentioned. We also have one for people, so you can self-assess and your manager can assess you in terms of your capabilities in procurement, with a view to, for both of them, not identifying where you're weak, but identifying where you need, assistance in improving, where you might need training or where investment is needed, technology, for example, in the procurement space. So it gives you a neat view electronically in a sort of spidergram, scattergram format of exactly where you're strong, where you're less strong, etc., where you're weak, and compares you to peers in your sector and across industry. And then really that just sets the basis for saying, what do we need to do? Where should we invest our funds, our budget in improving procurement? So, yeah.
That's brilliant. So we're going to talk about that next, right? Sorry, Nick, go ahead.
Yeah, I was just saying, just to add to that, I think the thing with it is, as Ed says, it's a self-assessment, but it's a tool that you can use not just during the transformation, but you can use it on an ongoing basis. When I was a CPO, you used to get a third party to come in every 6 months and to score you.
Yeah.
And that was part of your procurement strategy. This way, you can run this tool, on a 360-degree sort of feedback. twice a year, 3 times a year, you know, depending on how often you want to do it. So
yeah, let's get into that. I think for the next video, I love the approach, and I've been lucky enough to kind of look at it in a bit more detail, but I think that the audience could really do with seeing how you guys do that, because the outputs can be really powerful. And we're also going to cover tail spend. We won't talk about that now, but I think, again, you've got a unique approach on that. So look, I just want to say thank you. Always enjoyable talking to you guys. And let's follow up with the Assessor and Aurora video, and then watch out for the tail spend one as well. So I'll be speaking to you again really soon.
Thanks, Mo.
great stuff, Mo. Cheers.
Thanks a lot, both. Thank you.
Thanks a lot.
All right. Cheers. Bye.
Please also remember to like, subscribe and share this video so you get notifications on all upcoming content. Thank you for listening, and see you all again soon.